we should talk about possible coaches. I know you've got a nice list here. 2 or 3 of them definitely have got my interest.
I just wanted to preface that this is all speculation. I have absolutely zero confidence, and I have no interpretation of what any of these guys mean for our program moving forward, and that regardless of how much we want to chitter and chatter about it, we are just specks of dust. We mean nothing. And that goes for anybody that isn't sitting in the athletic director's office at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We can speculate all we want, but ultimately we have absolutely no weight in the decision-making when it comes to this. So just know that as we go into this discussion, that there is no official capacity at which we hold any weight, which is assumed, but I get so sick and tired of people talking about possible coach hires as if their opinion holds any weight at all. So I just wanted to humbly, as best as I can, with the most ego possible, to make it as ironic as possible. This doesn't mean shit. So let's, this is a little list that I compiled that I've just seen floating around Twitter. A few names I was already, before this game and before the inception of Frost getting fired, before any of this happened, there were obviously these names floating around even last season. And actually looking at pretty much all these names, aside from maybe 3 of them that I've got written down, all of them had been mentioned since last year. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
Out of this list, here we go. I'm just going to read them off really quickly, just so that the audience can,
this list is for entertainment purposes only. They mean nothing whatsoever to any kind of future of Nebraska football. And God knows Trev Alberts would tell you to shut the fuck up if you dared to mention any of these names. But here you go. These are the names we've got.
I just wanted to name them off so that when I ask this next question, it's at least kind of out in the air already. So I've got Luke Fickell with Cincinnati, Dave Aranda with Baylor, Matt Campbell with Iowa State, Mark Stoops with Kentucky, Matt Rule with the Carolina Panthers, Bill O'Brien with Alabama, Lance Leipold with Kansas, Gary Patterson with Texas, Chris Kleiman from Kansas State, Deion Sanders with Jackson State, Jacksonville State, Jackson, whatever, JSU, and an Urban Meyer penis. So I've got all of those names. There's probably some that are obviously floating around as well, but these are just the ones that I just shit out really quick. Out of all of those names, what's the first one out of that list that intrigues you the most?
It's a tie between 2, and I know I should probably pick one, but it's a tie between 2. Namely because both of these guys know the Big Ten. Number 1, in no particular order, would be Bill O'Brien at Alabama. This guy went into a situation at Penn State after the Jerry Sandusky crap and Joe Paterno resigns, whatever the hell it was, and then 3 months later dies because for some reason, not being the coach at Penn State, decided to kill him. Sad. It's sad to say, but that dude was a coach for half a century, and he didn't know that his defensive coordinator was diddling kids, but whatever. But Bill O'Brien came into a situation at Penn State, which was like 2 notches below the death penalty that SMU got. If you've not seen the documentary, The Pony Express, on the 30 for 30 for ESPN, go watch it, because they got hammered with literally the death penalty for being able to compete in Division I college football. Penn State got pretty close to the same thing, and Bill O'Brien still got those sons of guns to a bowl. I think every year that he coached. So that is some serious coaching. Granted, we beat him twice, I think. Maybe only once. I think it was only once, because we only played him twice. Kind of during that era. There was the the game that we played in Penn State right after Paterno was fired, and they had their interim coach, and the interim coach wanted Pelini to come over and kneel next to him while Ron Brown led the pregame prayer for both teams and all that good stuff. And then the next year in Lincoln, Bill O'Brien, I think that was his first year as the full-time head coach at Penn State, and it was all we could do to beat him. With a depleted roster, he couldn't recruit but 10, 15 guys a year, I think was all he could get for the first two, or all Penn State could get for the first 2 or 3 years after the scandal. That's some coaching. The dude can coach. Had a rough go in the NFL at the Houston Texans. I get it. And he probably brings a little bit of baggage, but damn it, he's the offensive coordinator at Alabama, and they figured out how to beat Texas yesterday when it looked like they weren't going to do it. But when it mattered, he figured it out, called the plays that worked. So Bill O'Brien for me, and right next to him would be Dave Aranda at Baylor, because he was that defensive coordinator at Wisconsin that just, other than Jim Leonard, who's at Wisconsin now, I don't think there's been a better defensive coordinator at Wisconsin or somebody who knows the Big Ten better than that guy. So those are the two names right off the gate that grab my attention. I would take, in no particular order, either of those two, I would be really, really happy with the hire. So I don't know. What do you think? What names pop out to you?
Shoot, I asked that question to you, not actually really having a substantial answer for myself. I was just curious more so what you thought, since you kind of are a little bit more plugged in with the history of some of these coaches, which I am not. I would say that the most intriguing name that pops out to me right away is Luke Fickell. Granted, when he was the interim at Ohio State, he went 6-7, and spent a very long time at Ohio State. Let me see. He spent basically from 2002 all the way up until 2016. He's been at Ohio State. So he knows the Big Ten, and that would be probably my first initial want for him, is that he knows the Big Ten. And of course, he knows what it means to be the creme de la creme of the Big Ten, which is Ohio State.
Sure.
With his little blemish of being the interim. But I mean, what can you expect as an interim head coach? As much as I love Mickey Joseph, I'm not expecting much from him, which is probably a good thing. I highly recommend everybody do that. But anyway, I mean, he knows what it takes to win in the Big Ten, and I would love nothing more than to see him find his way to Lincoln, Nebraska, and get a second shot at a head coaching job. But obviously the red flag there is that this would be his first tried and true head coaching gig. First head coaching gig in a Power 5 conference. Granted, Cincinnati's moving to the Big 12, so technically they're a Power 5 to be. But I mean, I think the Big 12, this is just my opinion, I think the Big 12 is bottom of the barrel when it comes to Power 5, with probably a tie between the Pac-12 right now. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Pac-12 and the Big 12 just like to battle each other for who's going to be bottom of the barrel for Power 5 conferences. And if it wasn't for Clemson, then it would be the ACC. But that's just me being a dickhead. So, I would say Luke Fickell. And I know that there was something that Lars Anderson posted on Twitter saying that he's got an inside source saying that Matt Campbell is a potential hire or whatever.
He just beat Iowa for the first time.
Yeah,
because Iowa completely sucks.
Yeah, he didn't. That's
the only reason he beat them. They beat themselves.
Yes,
yeah.
I would not. I would take a Matt Campbell because I know that he would probably get us up to 7 or 8 wins in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not his first year here, but there's a competent coach right there. I don't think that Matt Campbell is an incompetent coach. I mean, he brought Iowa State to national relevancy. Like, you don't just do that with a set of incompetent personality traits. Like,
well,
you
and
don't just do
he
that.
knows the Purdy family too.
Yeah.
Chuba's older brother played for him for 4 years, so he knows the Purdy family.
But one of the things that I did have to say is that, yes, it's rumor mill, comes from Lars Anderson, but Lars Anderson is undefeated with coaching hires for Nebraska, predicting coaching hires. He predicted Fred Hoiberg, and that came true. He predicted Will Bolt, and that came true. And he predicted Scott Frost, and that came true. Long before it became a national media talking point. He was kind of the breaking inside source for those things. So I don't know who in the athletic department that he knows that is an absolute snitch, but whoever it is, whatever party that those people are affiliated with, I mean, is he going to go undefeated again and be 4 for 4? I don't know. But history kind of shows that he might possibly be onto something with that.
I wouldn't be surprised, and this is just me, knowing Trev being a black shirt at heart, he's going to be looking for that defensive-minded coach, which Matt Campbell is definitely more of a defensive, because you cannot argue that Iowa State's defense is way better since he's been in control of that program than it ever has been before. Then again, defending Iowa is not all that difficult. Just make sure the wide receivers aren't open. Because God knows if they are, even if they are, the quarterback can't hit them. But yeah, Matt Campbell would be a good. I think Mark Stoops would be a good choice. But I don't think he leaves Kentucky.
No,
why would
he's got a really good contract there.
He's got a great contract, and I don't think they're going to let him leave. I think they're going to make sure they pay him what he needs to get paid if somebody comes calling. Matt Rule made a lot of stuff happen at Vanderbilt, and then he went to Baylor and kind of filled the gap between himself. I think he was only there a year. Between Art Briles and Dave Aranda was when Matt Rule was there, and they went to a bowl. I think they won 9 or 10 games that year. He wouldn't be a bad choice. I'm more concerned. Excuse me. Goodness.
Yeah, you're having a good time over there.
Too much good food. Even on my diet, your mom made something that was diet approved, and I ate a lot of it.
Yeah, no, he was Baylor's head coach for 3 years. I was gonna say I felt like he was there a little bit longer. Let me see real quick. Yeah, so he was there and he went 11-1, or he went 1-11 his first season. Then he got them to just above 500 and got them to 7-6, which they were 6-6, and then they got a win in their bowl game. But then, he went 11-3 and lost in the Sugar Bowl. But I mean, he turned that program around and set
I wouldn't have a problem with Matt Rule. I really wouldn't. The guy can coach, and maybe he's not cut out for the NFL, which, geez Louise, Urban Meyer obviously was not cut out for the NFL. He liked the NFL strip clubs, obviously. But definitely was not cut out for coaching. If I'm going to eliminate any names off of this list, the first name I'm eliminating is Urban Meyer, because there's no freaking way on planet Earth that Trev Albert's moral compass would even consider an individual like Urban Meyer. Yeah, granted, we're going to get more W's on our record, but there's a difference between coaching for Nebraska and coaching for Ohio State. I don't think Trev is going to want to get the W's while also taking a hit in the public relations department. Deion Sanders.
We've already got enough of that.
Deion's waiting to go back to Florida State. He's waiting for Norvell to fail at Florida State so he can go there and make sure that all the NIL money that he's getting at Jacksonville State goes with him to Florida State to buy all the best players in Florida.
No, he would be what would be considered a resume coach. He would just come to Nebraska for a few years, build his resume, and then deuce out. He wouldn't want to be here for the long haul.
Now,
Deion Sanders, that is.
An interesting name you've got on the list, simply because we have one of or two of his players here right now, is Gary Patterson. I wouldn't consider Chris Kleiman. I think he's a good coach for Kansas, but other than beating Texas last year, yeah, whatever. And they had to do that in a shootout with 7 overtimes. Gary Patterson, which a lot of people were saying when Bo Pelini was fired, we should have been talking to Gary Patterson.
Yeah, I remember that name.
He had hellacious defenses at TCU. That's why they were so good, was because their defenses were so good. He coached O'Shawn Mathis. He was part of the recruitment process for A.J. Allen before he got fired. So that's an intriguing name, simply because defense is where our team, at least as of last week, or the entire season, has been lacking, because offense has actually been pretty freaking good. So Gary Patterson is definitely intriguing to me. Matt Rule's intriguing. Mark Stoops, I don't think that happens. I think the most realistic choices would be Dave Aranda, Luke Fickell, Bill O'Brien, and Gary Patterson. I think those are the 4 most realistic choices on the list. What do you think?
I think you're pretty much right. As much as it seems like, just from a basic observation point, that I see Matt Campbell's name more and more often than not, I should say. Yeah, I would like to see, a Luke Fickell, a Dave Aranda, Bill O'Brien, Gary Patterson.
The only reason I would say that Luke Fickell is kind of out of the realm of possibility is because I think he's waiting for Ryan Day to go to the NFL. And I know we've heard that on many podcasts. I know I have.
I've heard it
and
times.
I think there's some truth to that Ryan Day was kind of courted by the NFL last year. They're kind of waiting to see what Ohio State does this year. If they win 10, 11 games, I think Day is off to the NFL and Fickell goes to Ohio State. So there's really no reason to even consider that name on the list, in my opinion, because I think Day probably wins at least 11 this year and probably hops off to the NFL for a lot of freaking, because, hey, he might fail like Urban Meyer royally, but he's going to be set up for life.
Yes.
Who doesn't want to be set up for life, right? So, Dave Aranda, Bill O'Brien, because Bill O'Brien's in that, that same category of coaches that a lot of coaches have been. The guy that damn near beat Nick Saban yesterday was his offensive coordinator at Alabama 3 years ago, something like that, Steve Sarkisian. So Bill O'Brien is kind of in that, as Schmitty says on Hail Varsity, the Nick Saban rehabilitation program for coaches. And who knows, maybe Bill O'Brien shows up at Nebraska and Scott Frost goes to Alabama to coordinate Nick Saban's offense. You never know. You absolutely never know. But
I
anyway.
just want to